What do you say, everybody? Welcome to Cover Crimson with Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie. We got a lot to talk about today. Deontae Lawson's status, toughest game on the schedule, and the NFL draft and Alabama's success at quarterback here lately. Been a lot of it. We're going to get into all that. Like, subscribe, thumbs up. Thank you for being here. Brought to you by our friends over at Pearl River Resort in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Now let's get this party started. Roll Tide. All right, guys, great to see you again. Get in that comment section. Let's talk a little bit of Alabama football. And Clint, great to see you. Nice job yesterday, you and Jimmy. It's good to see Jimmy coming on kind of on a regular basis and hanging out with everyone. I know they enjoy that. All right, let's talk about Kane Wommack. He updated Deontae Lawson's status. Remember, he was injured in the Oklahoma game. Defense went down the tube without him. I mean, he was such an integral part of what Bama did last year.
Yeah, I've been wondering exactly where he would be at by the start of the season, because from what we had heard, it was a pretty rough injury. So, when they brought in Nikhil Green, I know they were a little bit uncertain on what would happen with Justin Jefferson as far as the JUCO status and whether he would get an extra year of eligibility. And so I kind of wondered, okay, when they got him back, okay, now you've got three kind of starting caliber players. I know Alabama had three this past season too, but I wondered kind of how it would all work. When would Deontae Lawson get back? What would he look like? What would they ask him to do? And I kind of was skeptical as far as what that would look like. But just hearing from Kane Wommack, and we'll go ahead and put it up, the quote. He was speaking yesterday and was asked about Deontae Lawson, and here's what he had to say. He said he's handling his rehab similar to how you would think he is. He's a total pro. He's farther ahead than where most people are at this stage of his rehab, and I'm excited to see as he gets to do more and more things this summer. And then obviously to be able to go into fall camp and get himself healthy and ready. So I'm excited for him. So Mick, I've seen varying levels of concern from Alabama fans as far as the off-ball linebackers. For you, do you have any sort of level of concern? And if so, what are those concerns?
Well, I mean, when guys get injured, it seems like they just keep getting injured, right? I mean, it's like, and I think we've all been there with maybe not just playing football, but just in life. I don't know, like you have kind of like a hand injury, and then every time you hit it the wrong way, it kind of gets injured again. I think of great examples are the great heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder with the broken hand, and in every fight he seems to break his hand again. And so he has a propensity to get hurt, but when he's healthy, he's such an excellent player. Sometimes with those injuries, with surgery, you come back even better. With Tommy John surgery with pitching, but it just feels like for whatever reason he's just been injury prone, and that would be the thing that would worry me the most about his career, and not just next year at Alabama.
That's actually a good point, and one that kind of, I guess that should be kind of an obvious, but I haven't really been thinking about it that way. I've been thinking about, okay, the concern would be for most people, when can he get back on the field? What does Nikhil Green look like as he's a transfer? Justin Jefferson, he missed, he was limited the entire spring, black no contact jersey. But I really didn't think about the chance of re-injury. And I mean, I do that. Like I typically would think about that, but for some odd reason, I just haven't. So I guess for fans, it's like, okay, you might get Deontae Lawson back. How healthy is he? How does he look? Is he knocking off some? Obviously, he's going to be knocking off some rust. But, we remember when Dante Hightower came back from an ACL injury, and he kind of, it took him a little while to get his bearings back. And normally that following season, a lot of the time, guys they're not the same player for quite a while. And so how much does he fall off? Does he become a liability? Like we don't know one way or another. We'll have to wait and see. But you're also putting in or throwing in the fact, not just from Alabama's perspective, But from Deontae Lawson's perspective in his future, the chance of like, okay, he's kind of at this point got an injury problem, and he continues to have injury problems that kind of limit him or hold him out. And if that starts to happen, okay, now you're looking at Nikhil Green, you're looking at Justin Jefferson, two pretty good starters that we're expecting, but now you start looking at, okay, Caden Jones, QB Reese, Abdul Sanders. We also obviously saw quite a bit of Daryl Johnson on A-Day, Luke Metz. Like, is that enough to be able to hold over if something were to happen again to Deontae Lawson because he struggled with injuries? Am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what my point is. And then the other thing too, and I should probably ask you about this, but before I do it, I just want to remind everyone, Dancing Rabbit Golf Course over in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Great. I mean, look, the weather's fantastic. We watched our guy roll into a PGA win. Justin Thomas, you can do the same thing over at Pearl River Resort. The Azaleas, the Oaks, two amazing golf courses. Kind of gives you that PGA feel, but you don't have to have a membership to check it out. So that's an hour and a half from Tuscaloosa, 2 hours and change from Birmingham, Pearl River Resort. Yeah, I mean, like I kind of feel like there's a lack of depth when you kind of factor in the possibility of injury at the linebacker spot, on the defensive line, also at tight end, also and punter maybe, and there's absolutely nothing happening right now in the transfer portal. Do you think that part of this, and I guess I should ask you about the linebacker spot, is that a spot where you would look to maybe get somebody, or you feel comfortable with the depth? And then do you think they're kind of waiting to the last minute so that people aren't going to transfer out once they get somebody?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing is, the waiting game, kind of seeing how things look after the portal closes here in a couple of days. And then you start really evaluating, maybe you start bringing some guys in. But see, linebackers one of them is
wait,
like,
hold on. See, what you're saying is you don't do it until the portal closes.
right,
Because you can keep signing those guys, but they can't transfer.
right. So you can go out and
is that kind of an industry thing now? I mean, is that what everybody's doing?
Definitely not. Now, granted, there could be some extent. I think Alabama's doing it probably more so than anyone. Well, here's the thing. I think it's a combination of factors. I think they're looking for very specific guys, and we've talked about this, but the reason they're looking for very specific guys, pop-up ads are hilarious, by the way. But anyways, so I think that Alabama's looking for very specific guys in the transfer portal. And the reason that they're very specific is there's certain positions, there's certain types of players, because you're not pursuing necessarily starters, but you're wanting to pursue guys who are good enough where if you got to turn to them, they can actually help your football team. But they got to be willing to come in and kind of potentially be one of those guys. Now, you might say, hey, you could, we see a specific role for you. We feel like you can help us out here or there, whatever. I feel like tight end right now is the one position you're really not doing that with. I'm not saying that Brody Dalton or someone else wouldn't end up being like tight end 3, but I think they got a pretty specific vision for him and how he can actually contribute. It's not just, helping as far as numbers, but so that makes things a little bit different. I think they kind of have to slow play things as far as their approach anyways, but I also think there's a side of it where it's like they're purposefully managing this, letting the transfer portal close, and then you go out and you pursue certain guys. But a linebacker is an interesting one. It's kind of like tight end to an extent because we don't know what exactly Deontae Lawson's going to look like. We don't know, we think Nikhil Green's going to be able to make that transition. I think he was coming on strong down the stretch. We did see him working quite often with the first team defense, or what seems like the first team defense on A-Day. Justin Jefferson expecting him to be fine, ready to rock and roll by the time fall camp gets underway. So, I mean, it's like, okay, that's a good place. How many teams have 3 starting caliber off-ball linebackers, and then you've got some guys that you like as far as the depth, but it could be one of those things where things fall apart pretty quickly. Like, let's say Nikhil Green. Let's say, he's limited, because I do think to an extent he is as far as being like a true 3-down, not being an exploitable piece in coverage type of linebacker. Very good as far as coming downhill, the run fits, all of that. But let's say that transition, he has a hard time making the transition, or that he's just a limited guy. And then I was like, okay, So that's kind of, he's a guy who can certainly play for us, but that's going to kind of be a little bit of a problem. Deontae Lawson maybe isn't the guy he was last year right now because he's still trying to work his way back. If something happens with Justin Jefferson, he gets banged up or whatever, it's like you can go from feeling really good about that position and not feeling great at all. But it's the same situation that you're looking at tight end. Like, what do you go out there and add? Because, who's going to really be willing to come when it's like, it's also possible that Deontae Lawson is just fine and he might suffer a little bit, but overall, he's kind of the same player and he's an impact guy, one of the better linebackers in the SEC. Nikhai Hill-Green makes a seamless transition to the SEC and to Kane Wommack's defense. He ends up being a guy, and then Justin Jefferson continues to be the guy he was last year, which was a great rotational piece, linebacker 3. I even think can handle a little bit bigger of a role. Now, that linebacker's got all these guys ahead of him, and they're never going to play. That's kind of the dilemma they find themselves in, a linebacker. I think at this point you might add somebody for numbers' sake, but I more so think you just got to roll the dice and take the gamble because I just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of the transfer portal.
Guys, sign up for covercrimson.com. Clint, Stacy, our crew are over there constantly talking everything Alabama, $25 off the annual subscription, covercrimson.com. And we appreciate you being part of it. So $75 for the year. That's it. And you get the message board. You get all Clint's breakdown of every player on the roster, the transfer portal, the NFL draft. Ask him questions. He'll answer them. It's like having your own personal Clint Lamb. That's what it is. Like a subscription to Clint's brain. And that's all. There's a lot of stuff going on in there, Clint. You know that. But we appreciate you guys for doing it. And again, thanks for hanging with us there. All right, let's get into the schedule. Okay. You brought this up before, and I have thought about this myself. Bama plays probably too tough of a schedule after the way that the College Football Playoff Committee, pooped the bed last year by throwing in teams that didn't play anybody. So if you're not going to reward teams for going out and playing a tough schedule, then you don't play a tough schedule. And I think that that's one of the reasons why the Big Ten and the SEC are talking about a super conference, because you can't, if that's what you're going to do with these weaker conferences, then why even be in the same? And then they, you set up playoff matchups that are impossible because the teams that you put in there last year had no chance to win. And I'm sure Ole Miss feels that way. I'm sure South Carolina feels that way. It's not just Alabama, right? So now I look at the schedule this year and I'm like, this is a tough schedule. You got to play at Florida State. You got Wisconsin at home. Oh, guess what? You get to play at Georgia. You play LSU. You get to play at Auburn. And you want to answer this question, Clint, for everyone. They want to know. I want to know the toughest game on a very tough schedule.
I think we can all agree going in, despite the fact they're going to have a bye week the week before, going to Athens and playing Georgia is probably the toughest game. Like, you would put that number one. Would you agree?
You know what? I'm going to disagree, Clint. Auburn's the toughest game on the schedule. Until Georgia beats Alabama, they're all bark and no bite. I mean, look, Bama's 9-1 against these guys. 9-1. And there's been a lot of blowouts in there. They've lost they won one championship game where they got smoked 2 games before that and then had to rematch, and they were going to lose that game if Alabama didn't have their wide receiver get hurt. This year, I mean, if Bama would have came out and played a second half, they could have beaten them by 60. So I know that it's a tough place, allegedly, but Auburn's a tough place. That's actually where they play Alabama tough. That's where it took the last 2 games down there, and I don't care what their record is, pretty impressive miracle-type games to win, which we did. Gravedigger was one of the most beautiful things that ever happened in my football life. And then the Bryce Young drive might have won him the Heisman, right? So the bottom line is this. In my mind, until Georgia it backs up the bark, I can't sit there and say it's the toughest game, Clint. That's just me.
You know what? I think you make a really good argument there. Granted, the last time Alabama went to Athens, they handled business. That was also like, Kirby Smart didn't have Georgia in the position that he has them now, which I still think like there's a chance Georgia continues to fall off a little bit. And everybody that thought Georgia and Kirby Smart were going to take over for Nick Saban and Alabama and just be that team at the top that's always, going to national championships and winning a majority of them. It's like they're going to be a consistent playoff contender, no doubt about it. They're going to end up in the national championship game sometimes. They are probably going to win, more national championships or at least another national championship under Kirby Smart. Like I do still believe that that's going to be the case, but to the extent that everybody was building them up a few years ago, where it's like back-to-back national championships. If they beat Alabama in the SEC championship, they're looking at potentially a three-peat. It's like that they're not – Kirby Smart's dealing with the same things that Nick Saban was dealing with there. And I think they have some issues. I think them going out of their way to address their pass rush in the spring transfer portal, if I'm a Georgia fan, that's rather concerning. Now, some of the guys they got can help. Are you getting premier – SEC caliber, NFL caliber pass rushers out of the transfer portal, out of the spring transfer portal from some of these smaller schools? Probably not. You're just looking at guys that can kind of be Band-Aids and help and whether it be rotational pieces, starting pieces, whatever. They do have concerns though. But Alabama going to Athens against this caliber of program and with the way that last year ended, starting off catching an ass whipping and then fighting your way back. And then it's like it was about to be one of the greatest comebacks of all time from a national perspective. Obviously wouldn't have been for Alabama fans or us, but that's I'm sure there will be some extra emotion there, which kind of, that combination makes me think it'll be Georgia. But you're 100% right. The last two times that Alabama has been to Jordan-Hare Stadium against what I think were much worse teams than we're projecting Auburn to be this year, they were given all they wanted. And this is Auburn. They view the Kalen DeBoer era, of Alabama football as being very vulnerable relative to the Nick Saban era. So it's like that fan base is going to be electric, hungry, ready to go. So that, I can't disagree with that. And it kind of has changed. I was looking at a lot of these games, and I'm like, actually, it stacks up quite well. Like you get Florida State in the opener, you get a bye week before you play Georgia. Missouri's not going to be easy, but even though you're going on the road to play Missouri, as far as the teams that you have to go on the road and play in the SEC, that's probably one where it's like you would take that. Tennessee's going to be at home. They've kind of taken a step back at quarterback. We'll have to see how they look, but they don't look like they're going to be as much of a problem. So that's okay, or it seems okay right now. Then you get a bye week before LSU. Now, granted, before that, you have South Carolina and you go on the road. And that was one that I was going to point out. I do think South Carolina probably takes a step back overall, but I still think they're going to be a dangerous team. I still think the way that they played Alabama last year will have that team believing they have a chance. And you got a dynamic, one of the better quarterbacks in college football in the Norris Sellers. So that could be, a really difficult test, especially when you're coming off, obviously an SEC game on the road against Missouri, but particularly a game against Tennessee, which I think will probably be physical. That would be one that I would be keeping an eye on. And the fact that you got to go to, you're getting Oklahoma at home following LSU. So I'm not overly concerned with that necessarily, even though I do think Oklahoma's going to be much improved. The fact that it's in Bryant-Denny, the fact that, what happened last year, I think, Alabama will be definitely focused. I'm not overly concerned there. I would probably say the three toughest games on the schedule, in my opinion, right now, LSU will obviously be tough. Not saying that they won't, because I think they'll be one of the better teams in college football, but the ones that I circle the most and say it would be at Georgia, it would be at South Carolina, and you bring up a heck of a point as far as at Auburn. I still am going to put Georgia number one, but Auburn actually is not, based off of the points you made, they're not as far behind as kind of I was initially thinking looking at this list.
Guys, I want to tell you this too: 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip when using our code Crimson. MyBookie.ag, MyBookie.ag. They keep the channel going, and you guys keep them going. If you can't make it out to the casino, or you just want to kind of do it from your home, take advantage of it. And that's our deal that we're offering you guys today, and we appreciate them a whole lot for helping us on here, and it's really fun. But going back to what you said too, the thing that you got to remember, not just you, Clint, but everybody, is that this isn't the Saban era anymore. These guys last year were Jekyll and Hyde. Who are they going to take serious? Or are they past that now? Are they going to be disciplined this year? Is this coaching staff going to be able to do the Nick Saban where when you win, you really ramp up being on their ass so that they don't get complacent, right? Something that I heard Lane Kiffin talking about, which was so ironic because it was his big mouth that was talking about the college football playoff before they played Florida instead of worrying about Florida, No, it was him worrying about playing in the SEC championship game. Remember, instead of the college football playoff, like, what would we do? Like, man, why are you even talking about that? You need to pull it out of the old coach's book. Can you imagine Nick Saban if somebody was like, hey, do you think that your program, do you guys want to play in the SEC championship game because it could cost you the college football playoff? Can you imagine?
No, I can't.
Can you imagine his eyes bugging out of his head?
I mean, actually, yes, I can. And granted, that's our job. Like, we can focus on that stuff and we can talk about it. But when you're the head coach, that's not where your mind can be.
Mm-mm. And until they prove that the discipline's going to be there, that they're past the complacency, that they're not going to take teams like Vanderbilt lightly again, and Oklahoma, and then that debacle in the bowl game against Michigan, all things that are very un-Alabama under Saban. So they've got to figure that out. And if they can do that, then, you look at the schedule and it's you can navigate it. But I don't know. Just based off of my first year of what we saw with this new staff, is that the highs are high and the lows are low, and there was no consistency. So they got to get consistent. So when you look at the schedule, if you can lose to Vanderbilt and you can beat Georgia, and you can go and then crush LSU, but then you're going to lose to a really bad Oklahoma team. It's like, I don't know. I hope that they're more consistent this year.
That I think they're going to be better from a consistency standpoint. Now, that is, what am I basing that assumption off of? Hopefully learning a lesson last year. You would have thought they learned a lesson after Vanderbilt. But I think sometimes it's like, these fluky things, they happen every once in a while. When it happens twice in the same year, where it's like you didn't probably take an opponent as seriously as you should have, and you paid dearly for it, you can get beat by anybody in the SEC if you don't take them seriously, period. You should take everybody seriously. I mean, that's the ideal, but especially in the SEC, you should never view any game as an off week, or, hey, we don't have to put as much towards the game planning, or we can switch up the schedule a little bit, make it easier, get some guys' legs back underneath them. Things like, you cannot do that in the SEC. I'm hoping that lesson was learned and they realized that it wasn't just a fluky situation with Vanderbilt because it happened again against Oklahoma. Now I look at the schedule and I say, okay, let's say that they haven't. We'll find out if they've learned their lesson. I think against FSU in week 1, that's first game of the season. It's a helmet game. I don't foresee there being any sort of lack of focus there. There could be some rust that they're knocking off. New starting quarterback is a hostile environment. I'm not saying they're going to look polished and perfect, but I'm saying from a motivational standpoint, I don't foresee that being a problem. ULM, just don't think they can capitalize. Wisconsin at home, probably do need to take them seriously. I think Alabama will. They did a good job of taking Wisconsin seriously last year, going on the road. Now they got to come down here. Georgia's going to be one where it's like, okay, let's say that they get some super emotional victory against Georgia on the road in Athens in week 5. Week 5. And then you play Vanderbilt. Now, Vanderbilt's going to be at home, but I mean, playing Vanderbilt there compared to playing them at Bryant-Denny, I don't think was all that big of a difference. It's not like the crowd was like a huge factor in that. So that would be one to probably circle. But I would say, like, going on the road to Missouri, like, let's say that even if you lose to Georgia in week 5, if you bounce back and have a really strong performance against Vanderbilt, as long as it was respectable against Georgia, don't think anybody's going to be necessarily holding that against you if that happens. But either way, as long as it's like you don't get blown out by Georgia, whether you lose or you win, I think if you handle business against a Vanderbilt, you're going to have, coming up after Missouri, Tennessee, South Carolina, then you're going to have another bye week, and then you got LSU. But that's Tennessee, South Carolina, and LSU. That's a pretty rough 3 games. And then you got Oklahoma after that. So pretty rough 4-week stretch. Missouri's one that I could see them not taking as seriously as they should. It's going to be in their house. You know, a couple of years ago, Missouri gave Georgia all they wanted, and Kirby Smart even said after the game, it's tough to play and win anywhere in the SEC. So Missouri can cause you some problems. That would be the one that's like, if they could get, depending on what happens with Georgia, if they win an emotional game against Georgia, Vanderbilt will be one to circle. Even if they lose to Georgia, as long as they handle business against Vanderbilt, I'll be curious to see what they do against Missouri. We'll know a lot about this team in that area as far as their ability to withstand, praise and, not get too complacent.
I was talking to a former player, and I don't want to say who it is, but I think in his opinion, he could see this program turning into what Florida State was. What was it, last year, where they couldn't win a game, more than he could see them really contending for a national championship. So very, very concerned in his opinion about the lack of discipline and some of the things that we saw last year. He could just be alarmist, like sometimes when you play under Saban and you really buy into that, and then you see guys like that are, I can't wear my jewelry to work out. Oh, I don't want to work out today. The jump shots. I mean, I get it, but you're a guy that knows Alabama football better than anybody. I mean, is there any chance that could happen?
Man, what you saw with Florida State last year is like, I mean, I can't remember too many occasions where a program's fallen off like that. And especially in a transfer portal era where you can go out and you can fill any of the gaps. So like you might lose really good players. You lose Jordan Travis, but in their minds, they went out and they got one of the best quarterbacks available in DJ. And, granted, it's like Nick Saban said, and he was absolutely referring to Florida State when he said it, but you got to pay the right guys. If you pay the wrong guys, you can pay for it dearly. They absolutely did. But that kind of involved Alabama paying the wrong guy, Florida State paying the wrong guys. So I don't foresee, especially this year, based off of what they're going to have, they've upgraded a lot of rooms. Granted, you could have some like, everybody's expecting in some ways for Alabama's quarterback play to improve in 2025 relative to 2024. But let's say those people are wrong and you don't take that step forward, you actually take another step back at quarterback. I just, man, to go 2-10, that would be, your wins would be Louisiana Monroe and Eastern Illinois. Otherwise, you would lose to everybody. Wisconsin would get you, Florida State would get you, Vanderbilt would get you. And they might not specifically mean 2-10, like that caliber, but maybe drop off and you win 3 games or 4 games. Even still, no, I think a lot of we've never personally seen someone like Nick Saban need to be replaced. And he was so meticulous in how he did things. He had everything set up a certain way. Anybody that came in, including a Kirby Smart, if he would have come to Alabama, they would have done just enough things different where there would have been an adjustment period for everybody. But it was a pretty drastic difference as far as the way Kalen DeBoer operates, and it's different personnel that you need. It's different focus. Like you're seeing a lot as far as how they improve that wide receiver room in just 1 year. It's because you need to have dudes in the passing game that can catch the football. And so there was always going to be a transition. And the player that you're talking about is focusing more on the lack of discipline and stuff. I just think Kalen DeBoer, I don't know that he handled it the best, but I think with his personality, I don't know. I don't think that's a permanent thing. I just think you're moving away from the extreme discipline that Nick Saban had, the not a lot of fun that Nick Saban had, to something different. And some of the guys who were, still around, maybe there was a little bit of a tougher transition than maybe we were all anticipating. But I don't see that being a problem. I could be wrong. We could be sitting here talking about it, mid-season next year, that, hey, you're still seeing the same stuff. If it happens again this year, it will absolutely be reason for it's time to sound the alarm, because that's a massive problem. But are the excuses? Maybe, but there's a lot of justifiable reasons as to why last year played out the way it did, why it looked the way that it did at times. I don't foresee that continuing to be a problem, especially not to that extent.
That's a good sign. I'm glad you said that. I feel the same way. But But when you talk about it, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I think everybody wants to see Bama do well. But some old school people look at it and go, you know what? I see a lot of problems there that they're going to have to get figured out. I think having Ryan Grubb back on board and kind of the opposite in some aspects of Kalen DeBoer is going to help a lot. And I do believe in Kalen DeBoer. Also, before we talk about the NFL draft, remember at Pearl River Resort, they have the Timeout Sports Lounge at Golden Moon Casino. So an hour and a half from Tuscaloosa, 2 hours from Birmingham or wherever you might be. It's not that far, but it gives you that Vegas style experience, table games and slots in there as well. But the NFL draft coming up, and Clint loves to talk the odds of what's going to happen in the draft. Bama's had so much success at quarterback, Clint, in the draft, including Bryce Young. Didn't he go first overall?
Yes.
Number one, the first guy taken. I love how the media tried to make him out, and then some pundits like he couldn't play. Never gave him a chance. He's picked by the worst team. No line help, no weapons. Now the guy's pretty good. People are starting to say, hey, wait a second, this guy can play a little bit. So much of what happens in the NFL is based on the team that you have around you. You could put Joe Montana or Tom Brady on one of those bad teams, and they're still going to be bad if you can't protect them. He doesn't have anybody to throw the football to. So anyway, he got drafted high. Mac Jones got drafted high. Tua is a starting quarterback in the NFL. He got drafted high. Jalen Hurts didn't, but he won a Super Bowl. And then this year we got one of the most intriguing guys that you could ever look at when it comes to the NFL draft, and that is Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to talk about this is I find it so fascinating, man. Like Alabama, and I would love for someone to probably, and I guess that's going to be me because I'm the one that's curious, but to go back and it would probably take quite a bit of research, but to see if anybody has ever had a 9-year stretch like Alabama has had at the quarterback position, because you go back to 2016, that is 9 straight years of your primary quarterback, whether it be Jalen Hurts, whether it be Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, Bryce Young, and then Jalen Milroe, depending on where Jalen Milroe goes. Some people are saying it's possible he goes in the first round. I think second round is a lot more likely. I had him as even a potentially, like from a talent standpoint, through the roof, but just how long it would take you, the developmental side of it, the uncertainty, if he will be able to get some of these things corrected. I just thought, very toolsy guy, but I've been saying late day 2, so like round 3 sometime. But I'm at least come around to the fact of that might be what I think should happen. I don't think that's what's going to happen though. So second round, if that ends up happening and he goes in the top 2 rounds, that would have been 4 first or second round draft picks at the quarterback position straight. Excuse me, 5. I'm sorry, 5 over a 9-year period. And that is 123 out of 124 straight games that Alabama has played where they have had either a first or second round talent at the quarterback position. The lone game would be Tyler Buckner against South Florida in 2023. And that is an insane run. It is possible that even continues. But like I was looking back at like Oklahoma, like they had Baker Mayfield, they had Kyler Murray, then they had Jalen Hurts, but then you have like a pretty steep fall off with Spencer Rattler. He ends up, having to transfer and go to South Carolina. They did end up having Caleb Williams, so they have a pretty good run there. But just, 5 straight first or second round draft picks. Don't know that has ever been done over a 9-year period, by the way. It's not just, over a 5-year period. I mean, it speaks volumes, because what had Alabama done from like a high NFL draft pick standpoint for a very long time prior to this run? I mean, it wasn't great. So you had the AJ McCarrons going in the 5th round, Greg McElroy going in the 7th, Brody Kroll going in the 2nd back in the day. But this has been a pretty special run, and I just wanted to bring attention to it, because you can say what you want to about Jalen Milroe. We've certainly criticized him on this show, but I mean, he's done enough and has enough ability where he's positioned himself where he could end up being, potentially a first round pick, but more than likely a second round pick. Mick, that's a pretty special run, man.
Yeah, really. I'm curious to see where he goes. I think a lot of people on here are curious, and It depends on how you look at it, right? This guy's an absolute freak. Some of the scouts are saying that. Some of the teams feel that way. But he also struggled mightily as well. And what Jalen Milroe are you going to get? And I think that's what the NFL's got to figure out. And that'll decide where he's going to get drafted. But he'll be drafted in the first 2 rounds. So we'll see, man. Who knows? If you were betting, where would you bet that he would be drafted?
Early second, I think, is probably, I could see potentially a team moving into the back half of the first round, a Cleveland or a New York Giants or someone like that. But just, I said this yesterday with Jimmy. I think if you can get your bona fide stud in the first round where you feel it's like, okay, that's the one that you kind of have to hit. You really want more contributors and stuff in the second round. Like, you still were getting NFL starters. So I'm not saying, you've completely removed the risk. But if you feel really confident in the guy that you got in the first round that he's going to pan out, even if Jalen Milroe as a second round pick doesn't really pan out, it's still not like viewed as terrible. If you swing and miss at quarterback in the first round, then you're certainly going to be judged for that. But the Saints potentially at 40. The Seahawks. I mean, they got Sam Darnold, but I don't know what they're going to do. The Pittsburgh Steelers really seem like they like him. I'll be curious to see what that looks like, because it's like you got a 1 first round pick at number 21 overall. I don't think that's like too early. If they pull the trigger there, they really like him. I wouldn't be necessarily floored by that or shocked by that, but they don't pick again until number 83 in the third round. And I just don't think that's going to be, I don't think he's going to last that far. So do they move up for him, in the second round? Do they take him in the first? Do they trade back and take him? I don't know. The Rams are another team that's probably pretty interested. Got a late first round pick, could trade back, could trade up, but they also don't have a second round pick. They got a couple of thirds and a fourth, so maybe they could work something, get back into the second round if they wanted to. But I think that Jalen Milroe's upside, as soon as you enter the second round, it's like, okay, not as much pressure to start him. You lose out on that 5th-year option that comes with first-round picks, but overall, I think he would be worth the risk at that point, even though I fully admit it would be certainly a risk.
That's going to be fun to see as we watch the NFL draft. And guys, a couple things I want to tell you about is covercrimson.com, $25 off the annual subscription. We'll talk about the NFL draft and Alabama football in there as we do. And then MyBookie, use our code Crimson. Get on there and see what they have as far as the draft goes. You can do that from the comfort of your own home, and 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip when using the code Crimson at mybookie.ag. Congratulations go out to a couple of Bama players that are engaged. Get down on the knee, Clint.
Yeah, been there and done that recently. Certainly very cool, about to have their lives change, hopefully, as far as moving on to the next level. But Malachi Moore proposed to his now, I guess, fiance Anna, and Robbie Oots to his now fiance Reese. So congratulations to all of them. Hopefully they end up getting some pretty good news this weekend, and they can figure out exactly where they're going to be moving to, because it's not going to be in the state of Alabama. I'll tell you that. There is no NFL team in Alabama, but certainly a congratulations to both of them.
All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with us. Again, like, subscribe, thumbs up, get in the comments section. We'll talk to you again tomorrow, and look for a new elephant in the room with Jake Coker. But thank you guys for hanging. And again, we appreciate everyone at Pearl River Resort for making the show possible. Great time to get out there and golf. Roll Tide.
Resort.